Before this video begins, I would like to give a quick thank you to my Asban Team level patrons Fallon Cortez and Nathan Gibson. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Doctor Who finales are a tricky thing to write, needing to pay off a whole series of adventures along with often bidding farewells to companions or the Doctor themselves. Sometimes these finales are spectacular successes, delivering high stakes narratives in an exciting and fulfilling way, but then you get the bad ones, and there's a lot of them. However, for many years there was one singular finale hated more than any others. I'm of course talking about Hellbent. The Series 9 finale wrapping up the Doctor and Clara's dangerous relationship to the backdrop of Gallifrey itself. Hellbent lives in infamy. But why? What makes this episode so hated and is actually misunderstood? Well, as always, that's what I'm here to find out. So without any further ado, it's time to wade into the murky waters for a deep dive into Hellbent.
Good luck, Clara.
Good luck, Doctor.
So for some background context, Hellbent is not only the finale of Series 9, it also caps off an unofficial trilogy started with Face the Raven. That episode has seen Clara gamble with her life for the last time, pushing things too far and paying the price for trying to be the Doctor. The events with Rixie were orchestrated by the Time Lords to trap the Doctor inside his confession dial and force him to endure infinite torture, but the Doctor escaped, finding himself on Gallifrey as he realised who was responsible for all of these traumatic events. Heaven Sent climaxed with that incredible reveal of the Doctor back on his own planet, so everything pointed towards Hellbent being an epic and cinematic showdown of all sorts of action and drama. But right from the beginning, the episode makes sure to emphasise its character-based approach, with a pickup truck cruising through the Nevada desert and dropping off the Doctor at a very familiar diner, which is a little bit far from Utah. It's a bit of a surprising way to start the episode, but it's just a framing device. The Doctor meeting this waitress who looks and acts exactly like Clara, with Mummy on the Orient Express's cover of Don't Stop Me Now playing in the background to, create some cohesion there. And yet, they don't recognise one another, which is such an intriguing way to set everything up. It's also a bit of a meta misdirect considering all the Clara echoes of Series 7, splinters of the real Clara who all ended up with their own unique lives and identities, so some viewers might just assume this is another one of those. It's a very powerful and mysterious way to start the episode, giving us this puzzle of sorts to try and solve throughout. Of course, as I mentioned, the big cliffhanger at the end of Heaven Sent was the Doctor finally returning home to his planet Gallifrey, which was thought lost after the events of Day of the Doctor. This was Moffat's plan early on, wanting to resolve this search for the planet, but he also wanted to demystify the setting. Gallifrey isn't really special, it's just a planet and that's all it's ever really been. Right from its first proper appearance in Classic Who, Gallifrey has always basically just been about the characters who live there and all the political power struggles that take place on the planet. Stories like Deadly Assassin, Invasion of Time, Arc of Infinity and the Five Doctors aren't really about the planet itself, they're just about the Time Lords as characters. And that's what Hellbent tries to be too. Gallifrey only really gained a mystical and special reputation in the modern era because of the Time War backstory. Davis wanted to shed the baggage of Gallifrey and the Time Lords, wiping the slate clean and making it this place we could never visit, it was so unattainable. This all worked perfectly for the darker, more dramatic tone of modern Who, but Moffat reintroduced Gallifrey in Day of the Doctor, giving it a significant focus and resolving the Time War so that it was no longer this big deal, it could just become a normal setting again when the Doctor finds it once more at the end of the time continuum as we see in this episode. I do think Gallifrey looks absolutely gorgeous in this episode, especially the Citadel, with all these great shots emphasising the sheer scale of this huge, otherworldly sci-fi city. It's the most intimate look we've ever gotten at the capital in the modern era of Doctor Who and it simply looks incredible. I really appreciate how they bring this setting to life. Each area looks very distinct and unique. We have the barren drylands, the sleek white extraction chamber, the decadent council chambers, and the creepy derelict cloisters. It all creates such a varied look for Gallifrey. It had a distinctive look back in Classic Who, but it obviously faced a lot of budgetary constraints. So the direction of Hellbent really takes advantage of the new technologies and higher budget to showcase Gallifrey in the best way possible. I especially enjoy the aforementioned cloisters, a creepy area in the depths of the capital that looks so unsettling with all these crumbling walls and eerie mist rolling over the floor. It also gives us all these brief cameos of Doctor Who monsters who have tried and failed to invade Gallifrey, with Daleks, Weeping Angels and Cybermen all in various states of disrepair, leading to that nice action set piece of Clara trying to escape the Weeping Angels. The cloisters are just such a brilliant idea for Gallifrey, a really different look for such a familiar setting. It's made even more interesting because of the cloister wraiths, sinister creatures sliding around with digital screens on their faces, apparitions of dead Time Lords uploaded to the Matrix they're protecting. It's such a brilliant monster design, these horrifying protectors of the cloisters preventing anyone from escaping, adding some really strong eeriness and horror to parts of the episode. It's kind of like an SCP, I guess. Anyway, after announcing his return to Gallifrey, the Doctor trudges through the Mexico filter landscape of the planet, arriving at the very same barn from Day of the Doctor and Listen. It really feels like he's making a pilgrimage of sorts back to one of the last places he remembers being pure or innocent, having spent many nights out there as a child. He used to retreat there to hide from the mockery of his peers, despite him being a highborn Gallifreyan. So this unassuming barn holds a lot of symbolic and personal value for the Doctor. It's a place of solace and significance, which is probably also the reason he was going to detonate the moment inside of the barn and why he returns there now. I absolutely love this variation of the Doctor's theme, this mix of whistling and synths setting up this space western tone. It's just incredible. Indeed, this early part of the story was inspired by the 1949 western novel Shane, where an enigmatic stranger who refuses to carry a gun is drawn into defending a group of homesteaders from a cattle driver and his gang. Even the Doctor's clothes are designed to reflect Shane's appearance in the 1953 movie adaptation of the book. The themes of this novel are further driven home as the Doctor sits with what might be his final meal, all these Shobogans staring at him like a messiah because they covet him like nothing else. He's a highborn Gallifreyan, representing the distant ruling elite that looks down on these commoners. Yet here he is sitting with them, sharing their food and giving them a voice, standing with them and protecting them. Indeed, much like in Shane, the Gallifreyan military soon arrives to take care of the Doctor, but he and the villagers stand firm, a beautiful act of unity and defiance. Oh, and just as a side note, I love how the Gallifreyan soldier commands the Doctor to lay down his weapons, so he just drops his spoon. After all, we already know how skilled he is in the art of spoon to sword combat, but then our hero draws a literal line in the sand. Remember, he didn't choose to come back to Gallifrey, he was forced to by the Time Lords, and he is furious at what they did to him and Clara. No matter who they send to talk to him, he refuses, because this goes all the way to the top. Rassilon. The new look president of Gallifrey is just as sour and tyrannical as ever, played wonderfully by Donald Sumpter. Director Rachel Talalay had hoped Timothy Dalton could return as the character, but he was unavailable, and I think Sumpter does a great job in his place, giving the legendary Time Lord figure a colder, more vain personality. Dalton's Rassilon was a very campy, over-the-top megalomaniac villain, but Sumpter plays Rassilon as more pompous and elitist, believing nobody out in the Drylands matters. He is deluded and believes he has a right to wield supreme control over everyone. Nobody could ever disobey him because he's Rassilon. There's a really tense standoff as the Doctor confronts the Lord President, refusing to give him even the basic respect he believes he's owed.
Get off my planet.
There's just something so fantastic about how cold and blunt this is. Capaldi does a great job and excellently shows his rage all throughout the episode. He has some perfect angry expressions in the whole story, his attack eyebrows and frowny face just on top form, and it needs to be pointed out because it's incredible. I absolutely love the moment of the soldiers refusing to kill the Doctor before all laying down their weapons and standing to join him. They've served with him, seen all the horrors of the Time War and gained all this respect for him. They could never bring themselves to execute him. They also fear him too because of that same experience in the Time War and everything they've seen him do. It is funny how the Doctor casually stages an entire military coup of Gallifrey by barely saying a word. He's suddenly Lord President and kicks the legendary Rassilon off the planet without even finishing his soup. It's a great sign of the Doctor's anger and revenge, even the general comments on how it's going too far, only for the Doctor to say this.
I've barely started.
And this is probably the biggest part of the episode people seem to misinterpret. He's not meant to be heroic in this story, you're not meant to pull for him to win. He has gone through so much and it has given him this single-minded lust for revenge against those who wronged him. He is blinded by his trauma and grief of losing Clara, and it's meant to be a criticism of the character. All throughout the episode you get characters saying the Doctor wouldn't do this and the Doctor wouldn't do that. It's there to emphasise the point of the Doctor going too far and acting out of character. Even as far back as Curse of Fatal Death, Moffat has instilled this idea of the Doctor never being cruel and never being cowardly. So it's a clear statement of intent, as O'Hulia rightfully accuses the Doctor of being exactly those things, for banishing Rassilon into the dark and empty expanse of the universe. He's not a hero, at least not anymore. Now that he's president for a third time, the Doctor uses his political leverage to extract his dead companion Clara Oswald from the moment she died, which leads to a brilliant visual effect on time of Trap Street stopping and cracking, almost looking a bit 3D at points with the stereoscopic effect that actually kind of works if you use glasses. It's a pretty cool and nice way to return to that earlier episode, similar to how the 11th Doctor revisited old episodes in The Big Bang. In Face the Raven, Clara was sure that the Doctor would find some way to save her, but he admitted there was no escape this time. However, by using the tools and abilities of Gallifrey and the Time Lords, he can manipulate time to rescue her like this. We're always told that the Time Lords have all these incredible technologies and time traveling shenanigans, but this is one of the rare chances we actually get to see that. It's such a cool concept, this machine that can just yank people out of time and space. It makes you wonder what they're meant to actually use this for and how many times they've used it, which is some fantastic world building. I do like Clara's confusion and bafflement at it all. After all, she'd gone through all the stuff and faced the Raven, coming to accept her death and making peace with it, only to suddenly be pulled out by the Doctor and told she's on Gallifrey, a planet she thought completely lost and inaccessible. It's understandably a big shock for her, and that's even before she realises she can't even hear her own heartbeat anymore, because she's essentially being frozen in time, all her bodily functions are paused, which is another fascinating concept, a nice twist on the curse of immortality. Because she's not living forever, she's dying forever. The Doctor has pulled Clara out of her time stream purely to save her life, tricking the Time Lords to try and undo what they unintentionally did to her. There's a really great sequence as the Doctor straight up guns down the unarmed general in cold blood. You can see the desperation and madness in his eyes, even Clara unable to talk him down from this horrible act. In the modern era, the Doctor has always been so against murder, against guns in general, constantly talking down to soldiers and angrily accosting people who wield weapons. But here, he becomes a huge hypocrite, and again, that's the point of the story. He is going this far and breaking every rule or moral he has ever had, even willing to kill to save Clara.
You killed a man. You don't seem the type.
Like the Doctor later says in the cloisters, he can't be the Doctor all of the time. Of course, this big act of murder is made a little bit more family friendly by having the General just regenerate, because I guess you can't really have the Doctor execute someone permanently. This was also because Moffat wanted to have a non-Doctor Time Lord regenerate, something which is very rare in the show. It's a good thing to see how they have specific regeneration protocols, and it's less damaging when it's not the Doctor. Moffat also wanted this moment to reinforce the idea that a Time Lord can change gender through regeneration, showing that Missy wasn't just an exception, so the General becomes a woman who was apparently the norm for that Time Lord. Escape into the cloisters, we get the phenomenal scene of the Doctor and Clara discussing the emotional aftermath of her death. 12 forced to admit just how long it has been for him since she died. I do think there's a bit of a logical fallacy here when it's implied he remembers all 4.5 billion years in the confession dial, since every new Doctor was a copy being reinstated from a hard drive. Regardless, I do love Clara's visceral emotional response to seeing how long they trapped him in that castle, this flooding of emotion at realising the extent of his love for her and the lengths he'd go to for her despite supposedly being able to leave whenever he wanted to. He went through all that trauma for her, knowing how many previous copies chipped away at the wall for him to escape. It's a moment so well acted by both Capaldi and Coleman, whose characters have such a deep love for one another. Clara decides that the Doctor needs to know a couple of things, which we never get to hear because of the episode's nature as a story the Doctor is retelling. In Face the Raven, Clara was insistent that she already knew everything the Doctor had to say to her, but seeing what her death has caused, she realises they can't leave anything unsaid, similar to Bennett's advice to Lun in Before the Flood. It's a really touching moment, and I appreciate how it's left up to interpretation rather than being some huge speech or monologue. We don't need to hear those words. We can already see exactly how deep their love runs. The pair then escape in a stolen TARDIS, and I just love this default look, a really great modern update to the original TARDIS design. This console room had been built for an adventure in space and time, and it works really well here, especially considering Capaldi familiarised himself to how William Hartnell used the controls back in the 60s. So Capaldi can maintain a sense of accuracy and continuity to how it was originally piloted. It's just a shame they accidentally made the doors too short for him. These TARDIS scenes really see things unravelling as the Doctor gets all cocky, thinking he managed managed to beat time itself. He's so certain Clara will get her heartbeat back, so he swaggers around boasting about how they can do anything. But he's in deep denial here. He knows this isn't how it works, but he's convinced himself this will work, because it has to. We even see it as he insists Clara just hasn't found her pulse yet and they need to fly further. It's physically impossible for him to save her because time will fracture and the universe will burn, but he insists time will just heal and things will get better because he's that lost in his own heroic delusions.
This should work. This has got to work.
The Doctor believes the universe owes him for all he's done, especially after he saved Ashilda earlier in the series, and he thinks the universe should allow him to do the same for Clara, who he has known for nearly 1,000 years, and she has done so much for him that he's desperate to pay her back by granting her life. He sees her as an equal of sorts, an apprentice to follow in his footsteps, so he can't bring himself to admit her fragile mortality. Like Clara points out, the universe needs her to die. Her death is a fixed point in time, and trying to undo that creates a huge paradox because it's the reason the Doctor came to Gallifrey to save her in the first place. If Clara's death is undone, time physically cannot undo that paradox and heal, so it just shows that the Doctor is desperately fighting a battle he can never win, similar to the Time Lord Victorious in Waters of Mars, where he was so desperate to save the crew that, he went too far.
As of this moment, I'm answerable to no one!
The 12th Doctor having this Time Lord Victorious style breakdown and going against all his own rules isn't some sudden turn of events. It was heavily telegraphed and set up throughout Series 9. Each episode the main pair is separated and Clara's death is teased, seeing how the Doctor handles being without her. It builds up and up, each shave closer than the last, until it reaches the crescendo, this boiling point of her dying and him becoming hell-bent on saving her. Yeah, you see what I did there? He's a godlike being, capable of anything, but he's bound by the ancient Time Lord rules of non-interference and maintaining the sanctity of the web of time. And even when he breaks those rules, like in this episode, he's threatening all of time itself for such a selfish cause. Again, like Waters of Mars. It's only at the end of the universe he sees this for what it is, meeting Ashilda and the dying embers of Gallifrey in the last moments of the universe as we know it.
You don't seem surprised to see me.
First of all, the visuals of this scene are incredible. Gallifrey in ruins and the cloister serving as this final derelict wreck exposed to space, surviving in a reality bubble because there's nothing else left. It's very surreal when all the other immortals have since died. Ashilda's appearance in this episode as the last immortal is crucial because she is an immortal. Like I mentioned, she's an example of someone who the Doctor broke the rules to save, but she's also there to challenge him and call him out on his selfishness in this situation. Ashilda is a reality check for this lost character, reminding him of the permanence of Clara's death and how he's trying to take away her noble sacrifice despite that being her choice and her consequences, which is an interesting perspective and something I'll get back to a little bit later. Another reason Ashilda is in this episode is because of her nature as a fake out for the hybrid storyline. All throughout the series we've heard these prophecies of a hybrid between two warrior races destined to stand in the ruins of Gallifrey and destroy the universe. The nature of a prophecy like this obviously terrified the control freak Time Lords, so they tried to force the answers out of the Doctor, who supposedly knew what it all meant, despite not actually. And no, it's not a Toyota Prius. There, I made the obvious joke. Now, because of their own self-importance, the Time Lords believe that the hybrid has to be half Time Lord and half Dalek, because they're a bit biased like that. But we know from experience that nothing can be half Dalek, the race doesn't allow it. They're obsessed with purity to the extent that they've killed hybrids like Dalek Sec specifically for their lack of purity. The Doctor himself is convinced that Ashilda is the hybrid instead, being part human and part Maya, which is why he was so scared of her. But this was always meant to be a fake out, as shown by her name being Me, because the Doctor keeps saying the hybrid is me, and you expect it to be Ashilda. I think a lot of fans don't quite get the hybrid arc because they expected it to be a single entity we can perceive, akin to Bad Wolf or Torchwood as an organisation. Instead, Hellbent reveals that the hybrid isn't a single entity at all. That was just an assumption by the Time Lord themselves and the Doctor. Instead, it's a combination of him and Clara. Together they're the fusion of warrior races with a love so dangerous and toxic they would burn the universe one another. It's the express reason Missy brought them together in the first place. She loves chaos and destruction, wanting to corrupt the Doctor and make him become more like her. And as we see in this episode, she kind of has done, because of how badly the Doctor has broken his ethical code to save Clara here.
And you're willing to risk all of time and space because you miss her.
The hybrid is the manifestation of what happens when the Doctor is so consumed by grief he loses sight of who he really is. He's always struggled with personal loss. From Rose to the ponds, the Doctor has lost so many friends, but he's never been able to truly accept it. Always wanting to find another way to spend more time with them. He wants summer to last forever, even if that makes him a ruthless monster, stopping at nothing to get there.
It will unravel the web of time and destroy a billion hearts to heal his own.
But the Doctor is aware he's gone too far, so he accepts that the only way to keep Clara alive is to wipe her memories of him, to cut those ties for the betterment of the universe. This is obviously intended to somewhat mirror the Dr. Donna storyline of Series 4. The Doctor forced to save his friends by wiping her memory and ending their travels without Donna dying. 12 even alludes to the moment, using it as a justification for what he has to do to keep Clara alive. This whole scene is excellent, Clara begging him not to do it, again much like Donna back in Journey's End.
These have been the best years of my life, and they are mine.
I genuinely feel like this was Moffat trying to almost fix that earlier memory erasure plotline and show that the Doctor was flawed for doing that to Donna. It's always been a bit of a contentious topic whether Ten was right or wrong to do that to his companion, even though I think he was right to, a lot of fans don't. So it does seem like Moffat is trying to make amends for his predecessor's final companion departure.
Oh, Clara, Oswald. What am I doing?
But in a brilliant twist, as the apprentice she is, Clara claims to have reversed the polarity of the mind-wiping device, meaning it's now a 50-50 chance for both of them. The only way to prevent a hybrid prophecy coming true is for one of them to forget the other, but this at least makes them equals. It's their last adventure together, this big leap of faith into the dark. Clara half-heartedly suggests they fly away somewhere, much like the end of Last Christmas, but they both know they can't do that, and this is truly the end of the line for their relationship. It's great that the music from Clara's death is reused here, maintaining the finality for the pairing. There was never going to be a happy ending. This last hurrah was just extra, a bonus, much like Clara getting to see Danny again in Last Christmas before having to say goodbye. However, this time it's the Doctor who is the one forced to let go and accept his loss, because he's the one to lose his memories in this emotional and rousing scene. And I personally think this was the way it was always going to have to go. Clara had made peace with her losses, she understood her mortality and the consequences of her actions. She doesn't want anyone to cry for her, and she never asked for the Doctor's duty of care. But the Doctor, on the other hand, would never be able to accept the knowledge that Clara is still out there in the universe, even if she has forgotten him. He wouldn't be able to resist the temptation to keep meddling and try to undo her memory erasure and fix things. 12's character arc isn't over yet. He only later gets those memories back when he has learned to let go and accept that summer doesn't last forever and he can't keep running. It's the perfect direction for this departure, forcing the Doctor to say goodbye, something he has never really been able to do. I've mentioned before that the Series 9 finale trilogy is all about the stages of grief, and this is the moment of acceptance. The Doctor acknowledges he went too far and that this needs to happen.
This is right. I accept it.
This role reversal also inverts the end of Face the Raven, Clara refusing to accept that there's nothing she can do, much like how the Doctor was determined to save Clara no matter what it took. But that's the point of the hybrid, it's accepting that there's nothing they can do, because anything they do try and do threatens the universe. It's a really powerful and emotional goodbye, this final incredible masterclass by Capaldi and Coleman as a duo, and it's all driven home when the Doctor wakes up completely unaware of the woman he almost destroyed all of time and space trying to protect.
Clara. Clara who?
The whole of Hellbent is framed as the Doctor telling Clara a story, the events in the diner serving as a framing device as we bounce back and forth between the present and the past.
Stories are what memories go when they're forgotten.
It's a framing device that works perfectly for a story like this, because when we catch up, it all finally makes sense and the puzzle pieces fall into place. The Doctor only has general overview memories of their time and adventures together, but Clara herself is just a complete blank in his mind, nothing more than a reconstructed memory and a song.
I think that it's called Clara.
I do love how they take the non-diegetic music of Clara's theme and leitmotif and turn it into this powerful moment as it becomes part of the fiction of the show itself. Of course, I'm probably personally biased because it's my favourite companion theme, but it's just such a great piece of meta storytelling. It also drives home the tragedy of everything. Clara was one of the most undisputedly important companions, helping the Doctor so much as he ended the Time War and spent like 900 years on Trenzalore. Then she helped him navigate his regeneration and stood by his side as he wondered if he was a good man. To have everything they went through and all the moments they shared become lost like tears in the rain is a really emotional thing to see as a viewer who followed that journey from start to finish in real time. The knife is twisted even further as Clara jokes about being his missing woman, only for the Doctor to claim he would know if he met Clara again. Jenna Coleman absolutely kills it in this moment as you can see the pain and heartbreak in Clara's eyes. She has to turn away for a moment to cry because she's standing right there and the Doctor can't see her. It's a moment that reflects the end of Deep Breath, with Clara finally understanding how that feels, to be standing right in front of the Doctor and not be seen. She obviously understands why he can't see her, but it's still that acknowledgement and confirmation of losing him forever that breaks her heart as they part ways. After this final goodbye to the Doctor, Clara returns to the new TARDIS with a shielder, since this diner is just a chameleon circuit in action. It's a neat idea, although I hate that Moffat can't resist having this circuit break too, so they're perpetually an American diner. That's just unnecessary. A lot of people hate this ending for Clara, her being able to play as the Doctor with a TARDIS and a companion. It's probably the main reason people hate Hellbent and criticise it as an episode, and sure it is a bit self-indulgent, but I feel like it's the way for Clara to go out on her own terms. Her death is still fixed, she still has to go back to Trap Street, which the episode makes sure to explicitly state, but in the meantime she gets to have the extra time along the way. I don't think it's a cheaty ending because we have already seen her return to Trap Street and die. That has happened, her death is set in stone, so it's not as narratively unfulfilling as a lot of people seem to claim. It probably would have worked a little bit better if Moffat had been more confident about writing the puns out earlier, rather than them also still getting a happy ending, because on the surface this seems very much the same. But as I mentioned, the death on Trap Street is never undone, there's no trickery there. Clara genuinely dies, but this way she can do it when she's ready. She's not being rewarded for acting like the Doctor, she's still dead and there are still consequences for both characters. Clara just gets to take the long way around, and it's poetic if slightly mishandled, but it's nowhere near enough to tear the whole episode down because it doesn't change anything about the previous two episodes. It maintains those incredible consequences in a fulfilling way, at least in my opinion. And then the Doctor finds his own TARDIS returned, still bearing that Clara mural and probably making the Doctor realise he was actually talking to Clara a minute ago. But if anything, that helps him move on from her death, because he's had the chance to talk things through and to say goodbye properly. This scene also gives us one of the most incredible shots in the whole episode as 12 returns to the TARDIS console room, which is all dark and dusty after spending so long without the Doctor. Maybe not in a linear timeline sense, but in the sense of just how much has happened to the character since the end of Face the Raven. Seeing the console room all light back up again is almost like life returning. 12 has gone through all that pain and trauma, betraying his own identity and name, but now he has been redeemed and become the Doctor again. So it's a very symbolic moment as the TARDIS welcomes him home, embracing this fallen hero and giving him life once more. I think this intention's very clear. Clara has written on the chalkboard to be a Doctor, 12 puts back on his Doctorish jacket, and the TARDIS even gifts him a brand new sonic screwdriver. After the journey through the wilderness, the Doctor is the Doctor once more, with the triumphant 12th Doctor theme instilling a profound sense of optimism and adventure, showing he's ready to return to the universe and be a force for good. He has processed and overcome that grief, even if that was in the form of forgetting, and now he can properly move on, symbolised further as the TARDIS physically sheds the burden of his relationship with Clara, cleansing itself of that danger and toxicity. It's a brilliant ending for not only a series, but also a TARDIS duo, ending an era and resolving the Doctor's character journey in this trilogy. Hellbent is absolutely misunderstood and underrated as not only a finale, but also as an episode in general. Most people seem to go in with the expectations of it being some big, explosive return to Gallifrey, but it was always meant to be a character piece, simply using Gallifrey as the backdrop and the vehicle to reunite these two characters. As a narrative, it's an excellently written and acted exploration of the Doctor going rogue, showing this downfall as he becomes almost a villain of sorts, willing to do whatever it takes to save Clara, and kind of revisiting that Time Lord Victorious style narrative. It perfectly pays off their relationship by revealing it as the hybrid storyline and maintaining consequences for the both of them. Clara dies and the Doctor forgets. Neither of them come out this episode in one piece, and that's beautifully tragic after everything they did together. Of course, expectations for Hellbent were almost unfairly high after the magnificence of Heaven Sent, which is a pretty hard act to follow, but I would still give the finale an A rank on the Series 9 tier list. I really really see and respect what it's going for as a character exploration. A very distinct and unique finale we never really got before. It still has high stakes, but not in the sense of previous Moffat finales. However, if you engage with these characters, it is a very satisfying climax that has some superb direction from Rachel Talalay. Hellbent is meant to be the Doctor's darkest hour, this brutal crawl through broken glass and shattered hearts as an alien god is humbled and forced to accept defeat, being shown as so human. It's sad, and it's beautiful. It only really falls short a little bit with the overindulgent ending, but it really does manage to keep pace with the rest of the trilogy. It's a tragic tale of grief and embracing mortality, and I think the Doctor's personal story can be summed up with the iconic words of Welsh poet Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching. I know Hellbent is polarising to say the least, but I'm a huge supporter of it, and I hope I've managed to make you appreciate the episode even just a little bit more. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Bye bye. And I'd just like to thank my Asbantium level patrons, Fallon Cortez and Nathan Gibson, my Diamond level patron Glenna Clark, my Platinum level patrons Maximilian Foreman and Nick Games, and all my Gold level patrons Boots, Daniel Shillito, Franzorn aka Line Vortex, Robert Hock, and Tom Azar. Thank you so much for your support.